All right, so 15.2, factoring x squared plus bx plus c. That's nothing more than a quadratic. All right, you have to remember a quadratic is a second degree trinomial, not always a trinomial, but let's say a second degree polynomial. The essential question of the day: how can you factor expressions of the form x squared plus bx plus c? That is a quadratic. Okay, quadratic. So examine the sign of the constant term c, that's back here, to determine the signs, that means addition or subtraction, of the constants in the two binomials. We'll talk about that at a later time. And examine the factors of c to determine the values of the constants in the binomials. Okay, I know right now that explanation might not make total sense, but two binomials will end up being multiplied together. And when we do that, that's nothing more than FOIL. And if we FOIL them, it will return it to the original state of the quadratic, which is x squared plus bx plus c. So let's dive right on in. Vocab of the day. So the first word is quadratic. What is a quadratic? It's a polynomial with the highest degree of 2. So if I had a, let's say, x plus 2, is that a quadratic? No, because the highest power is 1. What if I had something that was x squared plus 3x plus 4? Well, what's the highest degree? Well, here's a 2, here's a 1. Well, the highest degree is 2. That is a second degree what? Trinomial. So is that quadratic? Yes. Okay. What if I put x squared plus 4? Well, is the highest degree 2? Yes. This is still a second degree, but what is it? That's correct. A binomial. So yes, this is still a quadratic. What if I had just plain old x squared? Yes, because the highest degree is there. So I have a second degree what? Monomial. Okay, so this is still a quadratic. Once I say x cubed plus x squared plus 3, the highest degree is what? 3. This is not a binomial. Okay, what if I had just 4x? Well, the highest degree is what? 1. So this is not a quadratic. This would be what? Linear, because the highest degree is, that's right, 1. Linear being 1, okay? So with that being said, you need to be able to identify what a quadratic is, and then we'll start talking about its parts. So quadratic standard form, that is going to be ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, this is kind of like standard form for linear, but remember the highest degree is what? 2. So now if I put here 3x squared plus 4x plus 5, you need to tell me what a is. A is equal to what? 3. B is equal to what? 4. C is equal to what? 5. Does that make sense? So that is one of the ways that we can represent a quadratic in this style. Now, what if I had x squared plus 8? You would tell me what? A is equal to 1, because there's a 1 right there. But I don't see an x. Therefore, b is equal to what? 0. And then that would still make c what? 8. I can even write it x squared minus 3x. You would still tell me a is equal to what? 1. B is equal to what? Negative 3. C, do you see any C there? No, so that's just plain 0. Binomial form of a quadratic. Binomial, that means what? I have two terms. So this would look like this. So x plus 3, x plus 8, that is a form of a quadratic. How do I know that? Well, let's use what we already know, FOIL. If I multiply first and outer, then inner and last, I will come up with, let's see, that says x times x. Then it says, add to it x times what? 8. Then you would add what? 3 times x. And then you would do 3 times 8. So let's simplify this. X times x is what? X squared. X times 8, 8x. 3 times x, 3x. 3 times 8, 24. I can what? Combine like terms. I will get x squared plus 11x plus 24. What is the highest degree? That's right. It's 2. So this is a quadratic. Okay? And as you can see, I know that A is equal to 1, B is equal to 11, C is equal to 24. But instead of writing it in that format, which is the standard form, I can write it as 2 as the product of two binomials. So you will hear that said, okay? It is the product meaning multiplication, of two binomials. Okay? So that is two terms, so that's a binomial. Two terms, that's a binomial. Process of factoring a quadratic when a equals 1. This is just going to be one of the ways that we are able to factor a quadratic. Now it's very, very specific. A has to equal 1 in order to do this method. So what I'm going to do is show you the complete way of factoring something. Once I do that, I will then break it down into steps and you will be able to follow along, and then we'll put it all together at the end. So let's say that we had a quadratic, and that quadratic said x squared plus 6x plus 8. Okay, so the first thing we want to be able to do is identify A, B, and C. Okay, so let's identify A. A, it's not there. It's just an understood what? 1. What's B? Correct. 6. And what's C? Correct. 8. So I have A, B, and C. That is the first thing that you need to be able to do. B is always attached to the x. A is always attached to the x squared. And C is always just the constant at the end. So the first thing you need to do is be able to identify A, B, and C. Okay? The second step, you are going to have to be able to find factors. Find factors. I don't know why I wrote find 2 times, but we are going to find factors of the absolute value of A times the absolute value of C. That's going to come in handy no matter what we do later on with factorization of quadratics. So I'm going to teach you that immediately. Okay. So we just said that A is equal to 1. We said C is equal to 8. Now the absolute value of 1 and the absolute value of 8 really just says 1 times 8. Okay? So what is 1 times 8? 8. Now, we are going to find a list. We're not going to do the factor tree. We're going to list all of the factors that go into 8. So what do? You make your little tree. You always start with 1 and put 1 on the left. And there's a reason to the madness, okay? It's gonna end up that the small numbers are on the left and all the big numbers are on the right. So here we go. 1 times what will get me to 8? 8. Then I mark down the next number, 2. 2 times what gets me to 8? That would be 4. The next number would be 3. But does 3 go into 8? No. What would be the next number? 4. But what do you notice about 4? It's already on the right-hand side. So we don't want to do duplicate values. So I know that the list of all my factors that go into 8 are 1, 8, 2, and 4. So that's how we're going to find the factors of A times C. Now the third step. After you have the factors of A and C, we want to find the sum of the factors that will equal B. Okay? So you're like, huh? What does that mean? Okay, so let's look at it. There are going to be 4 scenarios that you're going to see. Okay? And they all break down this way. C will either be positive or C will either be negative. Now with C being positive, that still allows for B to be positive or B could be negative. Now think about this. I need to have 2 numbers that will multiply and get me a positive number. So a positive times a positive will get me a positive C. But if I add 2 numbers that are positive, that will get me my positive B. Now, what if I want a positive C, but my B is negative? Well, a negative times a negative is still what? A positive. So that will get me my C. But if I add these together, a negative plus a negative will still get me a negative B. Okay, and trust me, I'm going to go over all this. Just hear me out on this. What if C is negative? Well, B can still be positive and B could still be negative. Now, if I take 2 numbers that multiply together to get me a negative, I know one of them needs to be negative. And I know the other one needs to be positive. Because a negative times a positive will get me a negative number. So I can still get C. But I need a positive B. Well, if the bigger number on the right is positive and the smaller number on the left is negative, that means I keep the sign of the bigger number. So therefore B will still be positive. Now what if B was negative? Well, if the smaller number on the left was positive and the bigger number on the right was negative, if I multiply them together, a positive times a negative, still negative, so I'm good. But if I add them, I have to keep the sign of the bigger number, therefore B can still be negative. Okay, so let's show this in practice. We know that C is equal to what? 8. 8 is what? Positive, okay? And we said that the factors of 8 were what? 1, 8, 2, 4. Now think about this. Put an equal sign, because we're either going to add or subtract these, and they must equal B. What is B? B is what? 6. And that 6 is what? Positive. So look at this. Here is C positive, here is B positive. That means that both of my factors should be what? Positive. So I am going to put a positive 1, positive 8, positive 2, positive 4. And now all I do is add them up. 1 plus 8 is equal to what? 9. 2 plus 4 is equal to what? 6. Does 9 equal 6? No. Does 6 equal 6? Yes. So these two match. So I know that 2 and 4 are going to be my factors that I use. All right? So they're the correct factors. Now, that leads us to what? Step number 4. Step number 4, we have to now write a quadratic in binomial form. Okay? So remember, binomial form is just two binomials multiplied together to equal what your quadratic is. Now, what is the variable? X. You're going to fill in X for the first term in both parentheses. Then, after that, you're going to fill in your factors. So the first factor is plus 2. So I am going to put a plus 2 here. And then the second factor is a plus 4. And that's how simple that is. That's how easy it is to write a quadratic in binomial form. Well, you can't take my word for it, even though you can. I want to make sure that you check your work. Okay? How do I know that x plus 2 times the quantity x plus 4 is really what we started out with? Okay? What did we start out with? Well, we started with x squared plus 6x plus 8. And then we said that factored, so this is standard, and this is the factored form. Okay? So therefore, I get x plus 2, x plus 4. Well, I can check and make sure that they're equal by doing what? FOIL. So I am going to distribute there. And what does that say? X times x plus x times 4. So x times x times 4, first and outer. Then I have 2 times x plus 2 times 4. That's my inner and last. And now I just multiply it out the way it says. X squared plus x times 4 is 4x plus 2x plus 8. And now look, I can combine like terms. X squared plus 6x plus 8. Are they equal? They're exactly equal. Therefore, my factored form is correct. I used the correct ones. X plus 2, x plus 4 is my answer of the factored form, written as two binomials. So there's my answer. Okay, so identify A, B, and C. That was the first step that we said we needed to do. And it doesn't matter what the quadratic is, we need to be able to identify A, B, and C. So I'm just going to write up a few examples. Let's say x squared plus 3x plus 8. A is equal to what? 1. B is equal to what? 3. C is equal to what? 8. You should be able to identify, if there's nothing there, that that's a 1. Okay? So what about x squared plus x plus 3? What is A? A is equal to 1. B is equal to what? 1. C is equal to what? 3. See how simple that is? Let's do a couple more. What if I just have x squared? Well, A is equal to 1. B is equal to what? 0. C is equal to what? 0. So that's the way we're able to do that. What if I have x squared minus 18? What is A? A is equal to what? 1. B is equal to what? Negative, B is equal to 0. There's nothing there. There's no x in here. B is equal to 0. C is equal to negative 18. Okay, so make sure if you go too fast, sometimes you'll get the wrong thing. So let's make sure that we don't go so fast that we mess up. Okay, now let's go to x squared minus 4x minus 29. What is A? A is equal to 1. B is equal to negative 4. C is equal to negative 29. So hopefully that shows you enough examples that you're able to figure out exactly what A, B, and C are. Because actually, let's add one more. Let's do 40x squared plus 20x minus 100. What is A? A is equal to 40. B is equal to 20. C is equal to negative 100. Okay? So we can have A other than A can be something else besides just 1. Okay, so the second step, after we know what A, B, and C are, we need to do what? Find factors of A times C. And remember, that's the absolute value of A times C. So let's give a few examples. Let's say that x squared plus 6x plus 8. We already said that A is equal to what? 1, B is equal to what? 6, C is equal to what? 8. What is the absolute value of A times absolute value of C? Well, that's just 1 times 8. And what's 8? 1 times 8, 8. Now, in order to find the factors of 8, always start with what? Yes, 1. So 1 times what gets me to 8? 8. Then go to the next number, 2. 2 times what? 4. Only write it if it works. Am I going to write a 3? No, because 3 doesn't go into 8. Do I write a 4? No, because it's done. It's already there on the right-hand side. So I don't repeat it. I just leave it alone. And you know you're done because you've hit a number that's on the right-hand side. Let's give another example. Let's say that I have x squared plus 5x, doesn't matter what b is right now, minus 20. What's a? A is equal to 1, b is equal to 5, c is equal to what? Negative 20. What's the absolute value of a times absolute value of c? So I get 1 times 20. What's 1 times 20? 20. Factors of 20 always start with what number? 1. 1 times what? 20. There we go. So that should be quite simple. Go to 2. 2 times what? 10. Does 3 go into 20? No. Does 4? Yes. 4 times what? 5. So do I go to 5? No, because it's already on the right-hand side. And that's how I know I'm done. Okay, here we go. Let's do x squared minus 2x minus 48. So what is A? A is equal to 1. B is equal to what? Negative 2. C is equal to what? Negative 48. Absolute value of A times absolute value of C. So that's 1 times 48. What is that? 48. So now I do my branches. Always start with what number? 1. 1 times what? 48. Makes your life easy. 2. 2 times what? That's right. 24. Does 3 go in? Yes. 3 times what? 1. 6. 16. Does 4 go in? Yes. 1. 2. Does 5 go in? No. Does 6 go in? Yes. 6 times what? 8. Does 7 go in? No. And here's 8. So I know I'm done because I'm able to loop all the way around. I don't want any loops. Okay? So let's do one more. So let's say x times negative 12x plus, let's say, a cool 100. Okay? So what is A? A is equal to 1. B is equal to what? Negative 12. C is equal to what? 100. What is the absolute value of A times absolute value of C? 1 times 100. What is that? 100. What are we going to do to that? That's right. Start with what? 1. 1 times what? 100. 2 times what? 50. 3 times? No. 4 times? Yes. 4 times what? 25. That's 4 quarters, okay? 5. 5 times what? 20. Does 6 go in? No. 7? No. 8? No. 9? No. 10? Yes. 10 times 10. And see, I don't have to go any further because it already wrapped around. Does that make sense? So this is what you need to do in order to be able to find the factors that might be possibilities in order to get our binomial. So now we want to find the sum of the factors, and they must equal b. Okay? Now I told you there are 4 different scenarios that you can get, and we're going to deal with all 4 right now. Okay? But they all predicate off of C. If C is positive, if C is negative. If C is positive, that means that B could be positive and B could still be negative. If C is negative, B could still be positive and B could be negative. Okay? And I'm going to show you a graphic organizer that's going to put this all together real nice and neat. But in order to have 2 numbers multiply to each other and still be a positive C, that means I need to have 2 positive numbers, right? So let's say positive 3, positive 4 gets you a positive 12. So we know it's positive. But if I want B to be positive, I need to be able to add them also and still come up with a positive number. So a positive number plus a positive number will still get me a positive B. Okay? Now what if I want a positive C? That means I need to multiply 2 numbers. A negative and a negative also will get me a positive C when multiplied together. But when I add them, a negative and a negative will get me a negative number. Okay? Now let's think about this. What if C was negative? So if I want to multiply 2 numbers together and get a negative, that means one of them needs to be negative, one of them needs to be positive. Now, if the bigger number is positive, when I add these 2 numbers together, I'll still get a positive B. But if I multiply them together, a negative and a positive is a negative. Now, what if I want 2 numbers to multiply together? I could do a positive number and a negative number like that. So positive times a negative is still a negative. But what if the bigger number is negative? Then I will get, when I add them together, a negative number. So those are the 4 scenarios that you could get, and we're going to work our way right through it. Let's make sense of it all. Okay? So here we go. A is equal to what? 1. B is equal to what? 6. C is equal to what? 8. Think about it right now. C is what? Positive. Okay? B is what? Positive. Okay? So now, we already said A times the absolute value of A times the absolute value of C. 1 times 8 is equal to what? 8. Do our factor tree. 1 and 8. 2 and 4. I know I'm done. That's all the factors I got to do. Now here's where, that's the multiplication part. Now we need to do the addition part. So you put an equal sign out here. For me, I like to remind myself that what am I trying to get them to add to? Well, I want them to add up to B. Well, what's B? B is a positive 6. Okay? Now watch this. We just said if I want to multiply 2 numbers together and get a positive, I need them to both, the factors to be positive. If I want to add them up together, they also should be positive. So that means I'm going to make 1 positive, I'm going to make 8 positive, I'm going to make 2 positive, I'm going to make 4 positive. Because I want to add these all up, okay? So now, 1 plus 8 is equal to what? 9. 2 plus 4 is equal to what? 6. Which one is equal to 6? Here. So I know that 2 and 4 are the factors that I am looking for. Okay? So that's one scenario. Let's do the second scenario. Here we go. A is equal to what? 1. B is equal to what? -6. C is equal to what? 8. So here we go. I got a positive C. I have a negative B. Okay. Now, we still do absolute value of A times absolute value of C. So 1 times 8 is equal to what? 8. Still do your factor. Always start with what number? 1. So 1 times 8. 2 times what? 4. Right there. Okay. Now, that is the multiplication part. I want to be able to add these up. So I'm going to put an equal. I'm going to put an equal. I'm going to remind myself I'm going for B. What's B? -6. Now remember, C was positive, B is negative. So that means both of my factors are going to be what? Negative. -1 times -8 is still a positive 8. But -1 plus -8 is -9. -2 times -4 is positive 8. But -2 plus a -4 is -6. Which one is equal to my -6? There we go. So -2 and -4 will be the factors that I use. Okay, that's scenario 2. So scenario 3. With scenario 3, what is A? A is equal to 1. B is equal to what? 2. C is equal to -8. So now, with that being said, you see we now have C being negative and B being positive. Okay? So we still do absolute value of A times absolute value of what? C. That is 1 times 8, because the absolute value of -8 is 8. So I get 8. Okay, now I still take the factors of 8. So I get 1, 8, 2, and 4. That's it. Okay, but now I have C being negative, B being positive. We said that if that is true, we need a positive and a negative. Since B is positive, the bigger number needs to be positive. So 8 and 4. The smaller number needs to be what? Negative. Now watch what happens when I add them. Remind yourself that you are looking for B. What's B? 2. Okay? So here we go. -1 times 8 is a -8, which that's what's equal to C. But -1 plus 8 is what? 7. -2 times a positive 4 is -8. So that's equal to C. So I'm good there. But -2 plus 4 is 2. Which one is equal to B? So I know that -2 and positive 4 are the factors I'm going to use. Okay, so the fourth scenario is going to be that x squared minus 2x. So A equals what? 1. B equals what? -2. C equals what? -8. So now C is negative. B is also negative. I don't change anything. Absolute value of A times absolute value of C. So that's 1 times 8. What's 1 times 8? That's right. So always start with 1. 1 times 8 is a factor. And then 2 times what? 4. We're good there. Okay? Remember, I want to add these up and come up with B. What's B? B is equal to a -2. Now, since C is a negative 8, I know I need to multiply a positive and a negative. But B is also negative, so I want the bigger number to be negative. So the bigger number is negative, which makes the smaller number what? Positive. Now watch this. A positive 1 times a negative 8, negative 8. So I'm good there. But when I add them together, 1 minus 8, I get what? Negative 7. Here we go. Positive 2 times negative 4 is what? Negative 8. Good. 2 minus 4, though, is what? Negative 2. So which one works? Right there. So a positive 2 and a negative 4 will be the factors that I use. That is all 4 scenarios and how C can be positive with a positive B or a negative B. C could be negative with a positive B or a negative B. So I've learned that you need a visual sometimes. And this is true. This is going to hold true for making sure that you can factor quadratics with ease, okay? So what did we look at first? We looked at C, okay? So C can either be positive or C could be negative, okay? So we make our graphic organizer real simple. Those are the only 2 choices we have for C, okay? Now, I'm going to draw this here. We also know that B can be what? B can be positive. B can also be negative. So now, remember, we're going from standard form quadratic, x squared plus bx plus c. We're trying to write 2 binomials. That's the factored form. So that means I'm going to have a binomial times a binomial, binomial times a binomial, binomial times a binomial. And this will be our factored form. But I can know exactly what signs are going to be in there just by knowing a few things. So when C is positive, 2 numbers that multiply together to get me a positive number. It's got to be a positive and a positive, correct? If I add 2 numbers that are positive and positive, what does that also mean? That means that I will get a positive B. So I know that if C is positive and B is positive, my answer will be positive, positive in the parentheses, okay? What if C is positive but B is negative? Then that means I need 2 numbers that multiply together. That will get me a positive number, but I need them to add together and get me a negative number. So a negative times a negative will get me a positive, but a negative plus a negative will get me a negative. Real simple, right? Okay. Then let's look at C. When C is negative, I have to multiply a positive and a negative, no matter what. But remember how we do our factor list. We have the small numbers on the left, we have the big numbers on the right. So if the big number is positive, like B is, and the smaller number is negative, then when I add them together, I'm going to keep the sign of the bigger number. So therefore, a negative times a positive is a negative. So I'm good there. But when I add a negative and a positive, I keep the sign of the bigger number. So I'll get a positive B. And then, of course, the last one will be, what if the bigger number is negative and the smaller number is positive? Well, a positive times a negative still gets me a negative. But if I add a positive and a negative and the bigger number is negative, then I'll keep the sign of the bigger number. So this graphic organizer is what's going to really help you later on to decide just by looking at it what your final answer should look like. Okay, so I'm going to write it nice and neat. as you go through, because you know me, I like it nice and neat. So C, when it's positive and when it's negative. B, when it's positive or negative. The result for me will be positive and positive. When C is positive, B is positive. When C is positive and B is negative, I'm going to get a negative and a negative. Okay. Now when C is negative, I know that B is positive. I'm going to get a negative positive. And when C is negative and B is negative, I'm going to get a positive negative. And these are my answers, the format of my answers, okay? So that's a graphic organizer you need to hold on to so it makes your life a little bit easier, okay? Okay, so right factored binomials. So now that we are done finding out what factors are going to work, we have to be able to write the actual factored binomial. So let's just go to the problem that we said first, right? We said that C is equal to 8, a positive 8. B was equal to this, 6. And we already know that A is equal to 1, okay? This only works when A is equal to 1. So we did the factor of 8. We found out which ones add to B, which was 2 and 4. So my answer in factored form, I write 2 parentheses like that. I'm going to put X as the first term, just by itself. X as the first term, okay? And then I just use my factors that I found. Plus 2 goes here, and plus 4 goes there. And that's your answer. That's how simple that is. So x squared plus 6x plus 8 in factored form is x plus 2 times x plus 4. Okay? So remember, that was scenario 1. See the plus plus? Now, we know that this was 2 and this was 4. Got us to negative 6. So we knew that C was equal to what? 8. And it was a negative 8. B was equal to what? No, this was a positive 8, sorry. B was equal to negative 6. A was equal to 1. Okay? So now, we found out that negative 2 and negative 4 got me to negative 6, so that's the B. But negative 2 times negative 4 was also a positive 8. So I knew that negative 2, negative 4 were my factors. So what is my answer? Well, my answer, I write 2 parentheses. What goes in the first term in each parentheses? X. Good job. No matter what, just put X. Then I write what? The 2 factors that I found to equal B. So negative 2, negative 4. So x squared minus 6x plus 8 when factored is x minus 2 and x minus 4. So now I come over here. Okay, so we found that these two were going to work when what? C was equal to negative 8, B was a positive 2, A is always equal to 1 because that's the way we're factoring, right? So my answer in factor form, write your parentheses. What goes in the first term? X. Good job. What is my second term? Well, negative 2 and positive 4. So x squared plus 2x minus 8 when factored is x minus 2, x plus 4. Okay? And then the last scenario I gave you, C was negative, so negative 8. B is also negative, so negative 2. A is equal to 1. We found that, there we go. We got a positive 2 and a negative 4. So your answer in factored form, put your parentheses, they are multiplied together. What goes in the first term? X and X. Okay. What's my second term? A positive 2 and a negative 4. So x squared minus 2x minus 8 when factored is x plus 2, x minus 4. And that's how simple it is to get your answers. Once you find the factors and you know which factors are going to work, then all you have to do is write your binomial times binomial. Check your answers. So I know I went pretty quick on the last section. I just want to make sure that you know how to check your answers, which we're going to use what? FOIL. We've already talked about FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. So I'm just going to scroll up here. We said that x squared plus 6x plus 8 when factored is equal to x plus 2 times x plus 4. So let's actually see if that is true. So here's x plus 2, here's x plus 4, and that is equal to me foiling, which gives me these 4 arrows. So I get what? X times what? X, right there, plus x times what? 4. Good. Then I do what? 2 times what? X, correct? Yes, it is 2 times x. And then I do 2 times what? 4. Okay, so that's my 4 equations right there. Here we go. X times x is x squared plus 4x plus 2x plus 8. I can combine like terms. So I get what? X squared plus 6x plus 8. And as you can see, check, check. All right, what about the next one? Well, we said that x minus 2 times x minus 4 is going to get me this x minus 6x plus 8. So let's see. We FOIL, first, outer, inner, and last. So what is that equal to? X times x plus x times a negative 4 plus negative 2 times x plus negative 2 times negative 4. Okay? So let's do this. X times x is what? X squared. X times a negative 4, negative 4x. Negative 2 times x, negative 2x. And then negative 2 times negative 4 is a positive 8. And if we combine like terms, I get what? X squared minus 6x plus 8. Checks out. Okay? All right, so what about this one? We have x minus 2 times x plus 4, and it better equal x squared plus 2x minus 8. So here we go. First, outer, inner, last. So that's equal to what? X times x plus x times 4 plus negative 2 times x plus negative 2 times 4. Does that make sense? Pretty simple. X times x is what? X squared. X times 4, positive 4x. Negative 2 times x, negative 2x. Negative 2 times 4, negative 8. Combine like terms. X squared plus 2x minus 8. Checks out. And then the last scenario that we had x plus 2, x minus 4. And this is just so if I want to check my answers. You would not factor it and get this and then say that my answer is back out here at x squared minus 2x minus 8. You're undoing everything that you just did, okay? So that's just a reminder. Don't undo what you did. Factor means divide, and you're able to divide these things out. If I distribute, I'm multiplying. FOIL is a way to multiply. I don't want to do that, okay? So here's me just checking to make sure I did my work right. So x times x plus x times what? Negative 4 plus 2 times what? X plus 2 times what? Negative 4. Okay? So x times x is x squared. X times the negative 4 is negative 4x. 2 times x is positive 2x. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Combine like terms. X squared minus 2x minus 8. And that checks out. Practice problems, put it all together. So I'm going to do one of them, but let's just ask this simple problem. What if I had 3x squared plus 4x minus 8? Can we factor it the way we've been doing? Well, this says a is equal to 3, b is equal to 4, c is equal to negative 8. A is not what? 1. Since a is not 1, we need to stop. We can't do this way. There is a way of doing it, but we will not do it this way. So I just want to make sure you understand that. So let's do one that we can do. Let's say x squared minus 4. Something a little bit different, okay? So let's do it. A equals what? 1. What's B equal to? 0. What's C equal to? Negative 4. So I see C's negative, B would be positive, it's positive 0. Okay, so here we go. Absolute value of what? A times absolute value of C. So 1 times 4. What is 1 times 4? 4. What's the factors of 4? I got 1 and 4. 2 and what? 2. 3 doesn't go into 4. So I'm good there. Now C is negative, right? So I know that I'm going to have a positive and a negative in order to multiply these together. When I add them, though, I need B to equal to a 0. Okay? So here we go. If I'm going to make the bigger number negative, and then the smaller number positive, positive 1 times negative 4 gives me my negative 4. So I'm good there. 2 times a negative 2 would give me my negative 4. So multiplication is good. Now let's add them. 1 minus 4 is what? Negative 3. 2 minus 2 is what? 0. So which one is going to work? The positive 2 and the negative 2. Remember, I can now write my answer as two binomials multiplied together. What goes in the first term? X and x. What goes in the second term? That's right, a positive 2 and a negative 2. Your answer for right here, x squared minus 4, is what? X plus 2 times x minus 2.